In this ArcGISPro video, I'm going to demonstrate some tools in the Travel Time Platform plugin. First, we'll talk about the Time Map tool, which is useful for creating travel time catchment areas, and you can also run point and polygon selections on them. Then we'll talk about the routing tool, which can be used for generating navigational paths for a given transport mode at a given time of the day. And lastly, we'll look at the time filter tool, which is handy for calculating travel time from origin points to destination points. The first tool that I want to demonstrate from the travel time platform extension is the time map tool. And what this tool does is create catchment areas of how far you can travel given a certain amount of time and a certain type of transport means from a given location. So say, for example, we're looking at all of our properties around London again, but if we pick just one, for example, this one, and for some reason we've decided that this satisfies all of our other criteria, so it's the correct property type, we're looking for a warehouse, and let's say it's in the right economic activity area, what we might like to do is figure out how far away our employees can live from this point for it to be reachable for them in time to work there. And yeah, so we can use the travel time platform for that. So once you've paid for that and downloaded it, what happens is that it appears as a tab in the top ribbon here. So we can click on that. And to create a time map, you click on this arrow below this symbol, and all you have to do is fill out this window and set some parameters. So first you decide what kind of mode of transport you want to calculate the catchment area for. So it's public transport, which is like reliant on buses, tubes, trains, everything else, but also walking, cycling, and then the driving is also traffic dependent. So let's do public transport for now. And then by default, it creates 3 different catchment areas, one for 15 minutes, one for 30 minutes worth of traveling by public transport, and one for 45 minutes worth of travel by public transport. But you can obviously set these however you like. So I'll leave them just for now so we can show what it looks like with 3 different catchment areas. So you need to make sure the time zone is set correctly, and you can also decide on a departure. So let's say arriving at 9 in the morning, that works fine on a weekday. And here we then type in the address of that warehouse. So it was 25 Churchill Place, E14 5RE. And we'll go ahead and run this. And you can see it's starting to generate these travel time areas, which are polygons on the map. Takes a moment. So if I click this away and we zoom out a little bit, and I'll turn off the properties layer because we know roughly where this one's located, you can see that within this inner catchment area, that's how far you can travel on public transport for 15 minutes to reach our warehouse. And then this one is the 30 minutes polygon, and that one is the 45 minutes polygon on public transport. So what you could then do if you had a list of addresses from your staff or your employees, you could plot them on the map. So I've done that here as well in orange. And we can use the intersect tool like we did before under the analysis tab in the overlay features section here. And we can use this 45-minute public transport catchment area as an input. And if we intersect that with our staff locations and give this a name, maybe staff within 4 to 5 mins, and output that as a point layer, run, we can generate a subsection of our employees that live within a 45-minute public transport journey away from this warehouse. So next I'd like to demonstrate the routing tool of the travel time platform. And this one's really useful for calculating the most logical navigational routes from origin points to destinations. So in this instance, I have the home addresses of 5 employees, and they're the origin points, and an office that they are needing to reach. And we want to figure out in what way they can get there at a given time of the day, using certain transport modes. So this time, instead of using this quick tool, like I did for the time map, these quick tools allow you to input just addresses as you know them. I'm going to use the full tools, and the difference there is that they are based on input layers. So you can, for example, calculate it for all of these 5 employees, the route at once instead of just one at a time, which is what we did by manually writing in the addresses for the time map. And for the time map, you could also, for example, just a quick example, not going too off track, use the normal tool to generate, for example, catchment areas for 4 of these locations at once rather than doing it one by one. Just to go back to the routing tool, essentially, if we want to not use the quick tools, we have to open up the catalog pane on the right here, and you do that by clicking View and clicking Catalog pane, and then that brings that up here. And then if we open the toolboxes, go to Travel Time Toolbox, you can see that there's the option of choosing Advanced and Simplified tools. And they're roughly the same. I'll show you the difference in a moment, but essentially it comes down to a level of customizability of modes of transport and how long they take you or you are comfortable taking them. So if we go into the routes option, again, you can see as for any of the other travel time tools, there's a normal option and a batch option. And the normal option assumes that you have one input layer for origin points and one input layer for destination points. But say if you, for example, had not only just a layer of staff home addresses, but also an additional layer of part-time staff home addresses, so multiple layers that you'd want to process at once. In that instance, you'd be using the batch tool, but we only have one layer for a destination and origin point, so we're going to go for just the advanced tool. So that brings up this window where we have to fill out a bunch of parameters. The first question is, where do you want to depart from? And this jumps into a drop-down list of all of the content layers that we have. Well, we want to depart from the staff home addresses, so I'll select that layer. It's also important to not get your time zones wrong, so going to England. And here is an option of choosing to schedule it so that we're departing or arriving at a given time. So this makes more sense if you look at the next question where it asks you to select what time and date you want to depart or arrive by. So let's say a weekday at 9 in the morning. And clearly both the traffic is going to be different and the public transport schedules are going to be different if you're needing to depart by 9 o'clock or if you need to arrive by 9 o'clock. So we're going to assume arrive by 9 o'clock. That's when work starts. And this next question, travel mode, again goes into a drop-down list where you can select what kind of transport means you want your employees to make use of. So this is Central London, so let's go for public transport again. And what I would now like to do is skip a couple of these questions and open up the advanced section, because this is where you get greater customizability of that travel mode. So there's a couple of default settings that the travel time plugin kind of assumes, but you can change these based on personal preferences. So for example, it assumes that it takes you 0 minutes to board a transport vehicle, which in theory is correct because it doesn't really take any time, but you can kind of make the assumption that people feel more comfortable being on a train platform 5 minutes before it departs, for example. And similarly, if your travel mode was actually driving to work, you could assume that parking time doesn't take you 5 minutes, but really you can do that in 2 minutes. And as such, you can make small changes. You can click on these icons to kind of see what they're all about. Walking time, maximum walking time is quite an important one as well in the context of using public transport as the travel mode, because by default it assumes that you would max be willing to walk for 5 minutes um, between using public transport. And this doesn't always necessarily make sense. So sometimes you might be willing to walk for 15 minutes instead. And then maybe that gives you the option of only using one train rather than a bus and a train or something like that. But again, it's down to preferences. So if you up this, it might give you a quicker route, but it involves more walking. So I can collapse that again, or yeah, close it, so that we have set our advanced settings as we liked. And now it asks, so what's your arrival location? So this is the one office, that's the destination for these people. And then output style allows you to change the symbology of the routes that we're going to be generating with this layer that we're going to produce. And we could do that, for example, again, you can click on that symbol to find out what they're all about. But there's 3 output styles. Um, one is travel time, so that gives like a shade of a color, and then the darker the shade, the longer the travel time. The other one is by transport type, so you can see what sections of the route are a certain, say, a bus or a train or something else, and you can also just have every journey be a different color. So transport type is quite a nice one to symbolize by. Oops. Transport type. And finally, it asks you to give a name to the layer that you're creating these routes for. So let's call these routes to work. And just quickly double checking that this actually saves into the database of your project already, because sometimes if you don't place it within your geodatabase, you'll struggle to get this tool to run properly. So routes to work. Save, and then we can go ahead and run this tool. It might take a moment because we did change some of those advanced settings. And there we go. So these are the 5 different transport routes. You can see that this person mostly relies on one and the same real underground journey. This person is needing to use a bus and then goes on the underground as well. And all of them have slightly different routes. And you can see that if maybe we'd configured this slightly differently, this person would have only had one train to go on, or train, if they were willing to walk longer. The last travel time platform extension tool that I want to demonstrate is the time filter. So this tool enables you to pick a number of origin points, or one origin point, and a number of destination points, or only one of them, and calculate the actual time that it takes to travel from them by a certain means of transportation. So this can be public transport, driving, cycling, walking. And in this instance, we're going to look at if employees living at these addresses are able to get to this office within a certain cutoff point. And that cutoff point can be up to 4 hours. So first we navigate to toolboxes and open the travel time toolbox. And within the simplified tools, there is the time filter tool. And I'm going to select the batch version of it, even though we don't necessarily need it right now, but just to show you that you could easily use this to analyze multiple layers at once, which goes for all 3 of the time travel tools. So departure locations in this instance is going to be the few staff locations layer, because that's the addresses of these 5 staff members. Where is it? There. And the travel mode, again, gives you a choice from this list. We can try cycling this time. And for time zone, it's very important to put that to England again. And let's just say that we want to make sure that these people are able to arrive on a weekday at 9 in the morning. Save that. And let's set this so we want to find out if they can do it in 60 minutes from where they live. And then the arrival locations for this, we're going to select this layer of the one office. And for output layer, this basically is where you give it a name, but you also really need to make sure that you save it within the database of the project that you're working in, otherwise it struggles to work. So let's call this cycling to work 60 minutes. Save, and we can just go ahead and run that. And what it does is create a new layer of the addresses of the employees. And this time it symbolizes them by gray and green stars, where the green ones are able to reach the office within that cutoff point of 60 minutes, and the gray ones are unable to do that, which even geographically looking kind of makes sense because these ones are further away. But to figure out how long it actually takes them, we have to click into the attribute table of this layer. So right click and then attribute table. And this comes in slightly raw format, so you'll recognize that the departure locations IDs, these are actually the exact same as the object IDs of the few staff locations layer. And then there's two fields that are important, which are the reachable, so it's a 1 or a 0, so a yes or no. So these three were able to reach the office in time, and those two weren't. And then this final column, travel time, displays, so I'm just going to quickly deselect this. Travel time displays how long it took them to get there in seconds. So that reads a bit awkwardly. So it's best to recalculate this into minutes because that's easier to understand. And what we also want to do is join this table up with the attribute table from few staff locations, because at the moment we don't really have a reference of which staff locations these are. So we kind of want to join them up with the addresses which sit in this layer. They clearly have addresses. So the way that we do this is similar to some stuff that we did in the first video. We go to click our newly made layer, and then on feature layer tab of this, we go to data, and we're going to just spatially join this up with our staff addresses information so that that's going to be able to sit all in one attribute table. So target feature is the new layer that we have, and we want to join it with the staff addresses. Have to give it a new name, so cycling to work 60 minutes. Let's just call it addresses. And it'll be a one-to-one join where it intersects. Okay, let's run. We're going to basically create a layer that looks very similar to this one until you look into the attribute table of it and realize that it has twice as much information. So firstly, it has the information from that travel time layer with how long it all took to get there. But now, in addition to that, it also has the address information from our employees layer. So we probably want to clean this up a little bit and then do that calculation from time travel in seconds to minutes. And the way that that's done is just closing that attribute table and right-clicking on the layer again and going to Design and then Fields. So this allows you to adjust a little bit what your attribute table looks like. So what we can do first of all is turn off some of the fields because they're not too important to display for now. The only fields that we want to keep are reachability and travel time. That's the travel time in seconds. And then we'll keep the address information as well. And very importantly, we want to add another field that's currently not in the attribute table already. And we do that by clicking here and giving it a name. So this will just be travel time, but then in minutes. And this is what it will display as or read as, travel time in minutes. Oh, well, oh, delete in minutes. And the data type for that can be long as it's a numeric one. So we'll select here numeric, otherwise we won't be able to make that calculation. So that's all the adjustments that we want to make to the attribute table. If we click Save here, and then close this window, and then open that attribute table again, and we can see that it's cleaned up a little bit. So we've just got our fields of reachability and travel time and some address information, and then a number of empty fields for travel time in minutes. So here what we're going to do is right click this field header and go to calculate field. And if we put this into Arcade, it's quite easy to see. We can write a little formula of what we want each of these rows to display. So what we would like them to display is the travel time from this other field, but then divide it by 60 because there's obviously 60 seconds in every minute. And if we run that calculation and close this, you'll see that it's generated all of these travel times in minutes. So if we look on the map to see if that kind of makes sense, this first one takes 33 minutes to cycle from their home address to the office. This one takes 38, and this one 24. So that seems to make sense. And these display as 0 because they're too far away to do it within the 60 minutes. So this is how to use the time filter tool to find out how long it takes to travel for employees to their office destinations.